And that's what the two of us are concerned about, and I'll give you some examples. Patients who miss a single dose of an anticoagulant drug could be at higher risk of a stroke or a blood clot. Those who take heart rhythm drugs could be at risk of having their abnormal heart rhythm return if they miss one single dose. And patients who've had transplant surgery need drugs to prevent rejection of the new organ. So we are talking about enormous physical and health implications, and we're also talking about huge implications for taxpayers, because much of the medicine that I just described that's under the authority of the Finance Committee is medicine that to a great extent is financed by the taxpayer. So, long before the pandemic, the Postal Service was facing serious challenges, and we have been working with Democrats and Republicans to address those. But that's not what Donald Trump is talking about. What Donald Trump is talking about is eventually privatizing the Postal Service. That is his long-term game plan, and you'll hear that from several of our guests. Before I turn it over to Senator Merkley, I want to mention one other point. We are going to make sure that every single ballot that is cast is going to be counted. And we are not going to let Donald Trump and his bullies take away that sacred vote-by-mail effort that Oregon has spent over 2 decades creating and showing the path for the country. And I'm going to close this morning. I talked to the governor, and I talked to Major General Mike Stencil. He's the head of the National Guard in Oregon, and I talked to both of them about, given our challenges, if we have to, and it sure looks like we will, the National Guard needs to be part of this effort in order to make sure that Oregonians can have every single vote counted. And we just talked in a general way, so there's no program to discuss this morning. But Governor Brown has been very supportive of the National Guard and has been interested in this, and a number of other governors are. And then we're so lucky to have Major General Mike Stencil, and then, of course, now leading the National Guard at the national level is Oregon's own Dan Hokanson. So let me turn it over now to my colleague, Senator Merkley. Then we're going to introduce our guests, and then I know some of you want to ask about other things. Senator Merkley.
Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night shall stop these carriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. That's the motto of the post office right behind us. It's the spirit that infuses a postal service, which is the one branch of government mentioned in the Constitution, beloved by our nation. Nothing will stop them from delivering that mail. But when that motto was written, who anticipated that the President of the United States would attack the ability to deliver the mail? And that attack has come step after step. We have the Postmaster General, who was appointed in a very political process, who said, we're going to cut back the overtime so the mail can't get delivered as swiftly. You have to count on more days. We're going to tell our delivery folks to leave mail behind. If they haven't gotten everything into their car to deliver, into their mail truck to deliver, well, they have to leave and leave the rest of the mail behind, leave it for another day. Leave the mail behind. That is not the motto that has infused the spirit of the Postal Service over the generations. Then we have the attack on the big blue beloved boxes. Now, out where I live, there were 2 big boxes. One of them's been taken out. And they say, well, we're just reducing the capacity because it's not needed. Well, maybe it's needed on the closing days of October or the first days of November to make sure that mail's delivered. So I'm concerned that they're deliberately sabotaging the capacity to undertake delivery at the point of election at the end of October and early days of November. And then we have the Postmaster General saying, I have a proposed regulation. We're going to nearly triple the cost to the states of mailing out their ballots to folks, going from that special rate for bulk mail to first-class mail. And then we have President Trump. And President Trump made very clear what he's after. And he says, quote, now they need that money in order to make the post office work so it can take all of those millions and millions of ballots. But if they don't get these two items, meaning money and a functioning post office, that means you can't have universal mail-in voting. His effort to underfund the post office is all about making it hard to deliver ballots. Now, we talked about the spirit of the post office, but let's talk about the spirit of our republic. The foundation of it is voter engagement, the ballot. Most important factor in a republic. And that spirit is embedded in the vision of our country of we the people, and of President Lincoln's description of government of the people, by the people, for the people. So our authoritarian inclined president is attacking the very foundation of our republic. Now, this may sound like hyperbole, but it's not. We've seen him attack the accountability that comes through whistleblowers. We've seen him attack the accountability that comes from inspector generals. We've seen him attack the accountability that comes from the oversight for Congress denying the ability to get documents and testimony to provide that oversight, that check and balance embedded in our Constitution. And now we have a president who will do anything to manipulate the vote in November, including attacking the mail. So we can't let that happen. We are here united to say that cannot happen in the United States of America. We are going to defend our postal workers. We are going to defend our mail system. We are going to make sure that everyone in America knows about this diabolical scheme to manipulate and damage the election so Trump can bias it in his favor. This cannot happen. We need to have fair election, an election with integrity, election worthy of the United States of America that has so long been a beacon of integrity in elections to the world. Let it be so once again this year, and we will fight to make that happen.
All right, you have now had 100% of Oregon's United States senators put their stamp of disapproval on the Trump program, and we're going to go to our guest. Dr. Domi Lee is the gastroenterologist. We're so glad that she is here, and she's going to be followed by Dr. Marissa Meyer, and let's have both of them come on out.
Dr. Meyer.
Dr. Meyer first?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Good morning. The following statement represents my opinion and not that of my employer. My name is Dr. Marissa Meyer. I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon. I'm a physician providing health care to veterans in the Portland area and throughout Oregon. From the Dalles to the coast to Bend and to Medford. I specialize in infectious diseases with a particular expertise in caring for people with HIV and hepatitis C. I also treat patients with other severe and sometimes life-threatening infections such as heart valve infections and bone infections. My patients know I will advocate for them, and that's why I'm here today, to advocate to maintain a critical component of our medical and healthcare infrastructure, the Postal Service. Because that's what the Postal Service is, absolutely critical healthcare infrastructure. The Postal Service is how the vast majority of Oregonians receive their medications. It's likely how you receive your medications. Children with cancer receive their medications in the mail. Our elderly receive their medications in the mail. Rural Oregonians, many with pharmacies over an hour away, receive their medications in the mail. Veterans receive their medications in the mail. In fact, about 80% of the VA healthcare system's outpatient prescriptions are delivered via mail order. Every day, 330,000 veterans across the nation receive medications in the mail. And my patients with HIV receive their medications in the mail. We know from years of research that interruptions in HIV medications lead to resistant virus, rapid rebound of the virus, and decrease in the strength of the person's immune system. If my patients with HIV run out of their medications because mail delivery is delayed, it causes them immediate and direct harm. I don't just worry about medication delays because theoretically it might happen to my patients. I worry about it because it happened to me with my own medication that arrived 2 weeks late. So I know it's happening to my patients and Dr. Lee's patients and others out there. And I haven't even gotten to the pandemic. Defunding critical healthcare infrastructure in the middle of a pandemic, when everyone is more reliant than ever on the Postal Service for medications, for medical and household supplies, is not just morally wrong. It weakens our healthcare and public health infrastructure and harms my patients. To face a pandemic with strong healthcare and public health systems, we must have a strong, fully funded Postal Service. We must protect the health of all Oregonians. Thank you.
Doctor, thank you so much. And I think apropos of her point, and now we're going to hear from Dr. Lee, Oregonians that I've been talking to being home, they're just stunned that 1 out of 5 Oregonians get their prescriptions this way, almost exclusively through the mail. So we're so glad that you could be here, and then we're going to have some additional good folks from the post office. So go ahead, Dr. Lee.
Good morning. The U.S. Postal Service is an essential service that delivers life-saving medicines. On behalf of my physician colleagues and our patients, I am speaking out to highlight how the attacks on the U.S. Postal Service are threatening our health. Americans depend on mail-order medicines. A Kaiser Health study in 2019 revealed more than 9 million prescription drug orders were sent by mail in one state alone. Veterans rely on the post office. In a single year, the VA's mail-order pharmacy processed nearly 120 million outpatient prescriptions, 80% of which are sent by mail. Our patients, especially those with chronic illnesses, are telling us their medicines are being delayed. These are real people, our moms, dads, aunts, uncles, partners, kids. And here are just a few stories. One woman reported a shipment sitting at a distribution center for days, and it was returned to the mail order pharmacy as undeliverable despite a correct address. I treat patients with inflammatory bowel disease, some of whom need injectable medications. These vials have to be shipped cold and be refrigerated when received. One patient's shipment was delayed by days, and she received warm vials, making her medication unusable. Many chemotherapeutic agents now come in pill form and are shipped by mail. There's a retired nurse in Southern Oregon with endometrial cancer who did not receive her oral chemo for weeks. A delay in cancer therapy can be a matter of life and death. And we can't just tell our patients, go get their medicines at a brick and mortar. It's irresponsible to advise our highest risk patients, the seniors, the immunocompromised, to venture out and be exposed to coronavirus. Patients in rural areas live hours away from the nearest pharmacy. Certain meds are not stocked locally. Insurance will only pay for some meds if ordered by mail. It is simply too expensive for most Americans to fill prescriptions at a retail pharmacy. As a mother of a child with asthma, I know that a 3-month supply of inhalers by mail is cheaper than a 30-day supply at my neighborhood drugstore. People are getting sick. Their lives are put at unnecessary risk due to these postal delays. Missed doses can lead to heart failure or a tumor growing back. Asthmatics without inhalers and diabetics without insulin will land in the emergency room. A delay can mean a hospice patient dying without pain relief. This corrupt sabotage of the USPS by the Postmaster General is actively harming Americans. We need to stop these attacks. Lives depend on it. Thank you.
Oh, Dr. Lee, thank you so much. And Senator Merkley and I are going to make sure that Dr. Lee's story and Dr. Meyer's story get out throughout the Congress, because, as we say, I don't think most members of Congress or people in this country have any idea about what Dr. Meyer and Dr. Lee have told us. Now, we've got some great people from our labor partners. Willie Groeschel of the Letter Carriers Union and Daniel Cortez of the Postal Workers Union have both been on the front lines of this effort over the years. Gentlemen, can you come on up? They're like the Senate, they yield to each other.
At the same time, you want this? Okay. Hi there. My name is Willie Groeschel. I have the honor of being the president for the Oregon State Association of Letter Carriers, so I get to represent the people that come to your homes everywhere in this country every single day. I never imagined that I'd be in a place where myself and my coworkers would be villainized. It's really shocking because the American public appreciates what we do, and it's been proven time and time again. Recently there was a Harris poll that came out asking about the 100 essential businesses during the COVID era. Well, the funny thing is the number one ranked one isn't a business, it's a service. The United States Postal Service, number one on the list of 100 most important businesses, essential businesses during time of COVID. And it's not a business, it's a service. Number one. We, the workers, the employees of the United States Postal Service, do everything we can every day for our customers. We're out there on the streets, we're in the homes, we're in the neighborhoods, we're processing the mail. We're doing everything we possibly can to get everything to our customers as efficiently as possible. And we have a lot more questions being asked to us every day because of it, because of the atmosphere we're currently in. We have made vote by mail extremely successful here in the state of Oregon, extremely secure. It has been one of the ideal models for the entire country to look upon and see how well the system can work. And to see that being put into question is mind-boggling for myself and my coworkers, because we make so much effort to make sure that it is as effective as possible and that everyone, regardless of where they live, how they think, gets to have their voice heard. That's the basic right in this country. We deliver everything from medications, as you've been hearing, love notes from family that you can't go and see right now. We are probably the last 100% secure form of communication. You can't hack into a letter. What gets put into a letter and sealed and has a stamp put on there is only known by the person that put it in there and by the person who it's addressed to receive it. That is a private document that cannot be opened and seen by anyone besides the receiver. That still exists. We have one of the most secure networks in the entire world, and we try and keep that integrity going through the efforts of myself, my coworkers, to make sure that we maintain the standard. I look at what's been happening as far as COVID relief, and I've seen how other large corporations, some of which don't even have their headquarters here in the United States so they can avoid taxes, have received billions of dollars in financial relief to help them through this unprecedented moment in time that we exist in. This is the first time in my 15-year career with the Postal Service that the Postal Service has actually had to come out and specifically ask for financial help. We've asked for other things because there's other laws that aren't just that are affecting us, but we've never actually had to ask for financial relief. This is the first time we're doing it, and so far we have not received it, whereas these other corporations have. The American public needs us now more than ever. My membership, my people, myself are out on the street every single day exposing ourselves to numerous possible contagion episodes. In fact, there was an article in the Government Executive on May 21st that showed that out of all the federal agencies, the Postal Service at that point in time had not only the most positive cases of COVID-19 for its workforce, but also the most deaths of any federal agency. We're out here because we care about our communities. We're out here because we care about our neighbors, because we care about our families and where we live. We want to make sure that the American public knows that we've been here for 240 years. We are an essential part of the infrastructure of this country. We're right there in the Constitution, and we will continue to be there as long as we have the American public standing up and speaking out and demanding that the Postal Service get the assistance it needs.
Willie, thank you. And Dan, just one quick thing. Willie made the point about the fact that the Postal Service hasn't gotten the help that they need. And that is because the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, skipped town, and Mitch McConnell adjourned essentially the whole Senate for 26 days. So Senator Merkley and I are prepared on a minute's notice to go back there and get exactly the help Willie is talking about. So we're clear on all of that. Dan, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. My name is Daniel Cortez with the American Postal Workers Union, and I represent the clerks that are in here right now, working the window, taking the customer's mail and getting it moved. I want to start out by just echoing what's already been said. Oregon has been a leader in vote by mail and can continue to serve as a model to the rest of the country. And with champions in the Senate, like Senators Wyden and Merkley, and the support of all of us, we surely can and will and must prevail. The moving the mail is woven into the fabric and the DNA of postal workers. Every piece, every day. For mail to sit unworked used to be unconscionable. Overtime gets worked. We would do everything in our power to make sure that mail, particularly first class and priority mail, but any mail, got moved. We sorted it at the processing centers, we distributed it here to the carriers so the carriers could get it to the street and get it out to the American people. That is what's under attack. For years, there has been a deliberate erosion of service standards in the Postal Service, where it's allowed now by regulation to sit a little bit longer. But as postal workers, we never allowed that to really happen. We still maintained our responsibility to move the mail. Management took it seriously, that even though, yes, it might by regulation be allowed to take an extra day, we still didn't allow it to sit there. And every effort was made to keep that mail moving. That's just simply not the case today, where it's deliberately being left sitting in the processing center, sitting in a dock, not being taken to the stations, or being left in a station day after day, night after night, and not coming out to the American people. That's unacceptable, and we need not only the immediate financial relief of the HEROES Act, but we also need to address this deliberate attack on service standards so that the American people can get the service that they deserve. We need to remember, as Willie said, this is not the United States Postal for-profit business. This is the Postal Service, the second oldest federal institution in this country, enshrined in the Constitution. We need to be allowed to provide that service to the American people, no matter what. Thank you.
Well said, Dan. All right, so we're in a small area. We're going to try and do social distancing. Let's see if we can try two things. Let's see if we can take a couple of questions from you all, and whoever you want to ask a question to will go to the little bank of microphones by themselves, so we'll all kind of stay socially distanced. And after a little bit of that, we'll be available to talk to people one-on-one, okay? But a couple questions, if there are any, for any speaker, and we can do that for a couple minutes, then we'll do one-on-one. Lisa?
Yes, Senator Wyden, question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the National Guard stepping in what role? Is this relative to mail-in ballots only?
Well, we want to make sure that since mail-in ballots are the target of Donald Trump's wrath, particularly hypocritical in that he votes by mail, when I talked to the governor and General Stencil, I talked about essentially ways in which they could help us from the standpoint of an administrative kind of boost. In other words, you don't want to ask the National Guard, for example, to make decisions about this ballot being tossed or that ballot being tossed, but it would be a role, and other governors are now talking to their National Guard people about this as well. But it would be an effort to try to deal with the kind of administrative efforts that are part of making sure that people can vote and have their ballot cast.
So maybe a collection point then in different
I'm not going to get into kind of establishing a program here today, detail by detail, but I think, and I looked at what is being talked about around the country, and the real distinction is having them look to try to deal with the administrative efforts that are really being held up as a result of mailboxes disappearing and all this kind of thing, and not the kinds of activities that would be considered more political in nature, such as the role that we've had about saying Lisa's ballot is going to be sent back to her or something like that.
How concerned are you? We talked earlier about Oregon being the pioneer. We do this, right? This is what we do. How concerned are you about Oregon versus just strictly with the vote by mail?
No.
Versus the rest of the country?
Well, I've got my heart and my head around this. My heart says we have been doing this. I'm the nation's first mail-in United States Senator, something I'm very proud of. So we've been doing this for decades. And we've had leaders like Dennis Richardson, a rock-ribbed conservative, a Republican, saying to Donald Trump, there hadn't been fraud. So my heart tells me we're in very strong shape. My head tells me that Donald Trump is especially looking at Oregon as a place he's going to experiment with, almost like somebody called it a petri dish. And so I am concerned that we continue to be as vigilant as we've been about vote by mail for 25 years, that we look at marshaling all of the available resources, which is why I talked this morning about the Guard. The Guard serves at the direction of the governor. And so I've got my heart and my head in it, and my heart tells me we've done this so well for so many years. I mean, we just had an election here just a few days ago. Neither side said that there was fraud or anything like that. So I'm very, very confident in the technical ability of those union folks, the wonderful people in here. But I've also been listening, as Senator Merkley has, to what Donald Trump has been saying, and it's clear that when Oregon and our state comes up, he's got a special, focus on walking all over us. And we're just making it clear he's not going to be able to do it. Yeah, sure, of course.
First time I ran for election to the Oregon House, it was 1998, and half of the state was voting by mail and half was voting at the polls, because both parties had promoted the idea of encouraging people to get absentee ballots. And then in 2000, it was a full vote by mail. I can tell you that neither in 1998 or 2000 here in Oregon did we have a problem with mail being able to be delivered to help complete that vision of the opportunity to vote by mail. A couple of the interesting twists and turns in this battle, which haven't been mentioned, I wanted to bring them up. The first is that the president is not operating on principle. First, he attacks vote by mail as not having integrity, when we know the real voter manipulation comes on polling day, when people put too few poll workers in communities they don't want to be able to vote, when they suppress the registration forms for communities that they don't want to vote, when they proceed to cut the hours of early voting, when they proceed to reduce the number of precinct voting places. And we saw this in Wisconsin this last year for a special election for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, where in one of the major cities of Wisconsin, they reduced the polling places to just one. But when the citizens of Wisconsin heard about this, their reaction was, we are not going to be manipulated in this fashion. And part of my hope is that by Senator Wyden's and my effort and so many others, we're going to alert the citizens to this effort, and we'll see hopefully across the nation what happened in Wisconsin, which is the citizens said, we value our right and our responsibility to be engaged at the voting booth, and we're going to make sure we get those ballots in. Now, How is President Trump voting in this election? He's voting by mail. How is Melania voting? Oh, she's voting by mail. And when it looked like the president's message was going to damage his standing on Florida, what did he say? Oh, vote by mail in Florida is just fine. So let's understand, this is an absolute bald political strategy to manipulate the election in November, and we cannot let that happen.
One last point on this whole question of how Oregon figures in to this debate. We also have exceptionally strong bona fides in terms of how nonpartisan vote by mail is. I was the nation's first mail-in United States Senator. I'm a Democrat. The second mail-in United States Senator was Gordon Smith. He was a Republican. I mentioned the late Dennis Richardson, this very conservative Secretary of State who made it clear to Donald Trump before he passed that he didn't believe there was fraud. And then Bev Clarno, our current Secretary of State, has also, as a Republican, made that point. So Oregon does fit in to the national debate with very strong bona fides that people look at our history and say, yep, they've been doing it. There haven't been instances of fraud. And by the way, there's been Democratic and Republican support every step of the way. Yeah.
Question for either one of the postal representatives.
Sure. Billy, Dan, either one? Come on.
Couple things. So, we're obviously hearing from lawmakers about how they feel that this would impact the system when we get near the November election. For you guys, though, if this loan is not approved, it's rejected, from a system standpoint, how would this actually affect the processes within USPS? And how can you explain that to Oregonians of how things might be impacted for them?
So I can't speak on behalf of the agency or specifically how it would impact directly, but I can just remind everyone that the Postal Board of Governors came up with the $25 billion number. The postal leadership said that we will run out of money as an agency by October if that doesn't happen. Now, what that means after that, well, we've already seen the PMG with his desire to cut overtime. If, on just a very simple note, we will work the mail that's there as long as we're allowed to. But if we're told to stop and go home and the mail is left sitting there, there's nothing that can be done. And if that's because we run out of money or under the guise of belt tightening, when we've been operating using overtime for my entire postal career, it's built into the system that a certain number of people are going to be working overtime because that is what it takes to move America's mail. We would love to see adequate staffing across the board so that wasn't necessary, but the reality is, as long as management controls the staffing levels, they can stop work whether it's there or not. And that's why Congress needs to act, not only with the funding, but with legislation that restores service standards to where they were in 2011, so the mail of the American people moves and moves promptly.
Willie, you want to add?
Well, and the other thing that I'd add, as far as like a practical example for the people to understand, is that when there's a federal holiday, we don't go out and we're off. We're not delivering the bulk of the mail. That following Monday after that federal holiday, in most cases, your letter carrier is getting to your house a little later than normal because there's so much backlog. And the only way we can function and get everything out that day is through overtime. So if no overtime is permitted and mail's being left behind, it's just gonna keep adding up. And none of us want to see that. That tears us apart inside when we see those sorts of things happening. So we, as the employees, do everything we can to get every piece of mail out to every single person every single day. That's our culture. That's what we believe in. That's what we strive for. And we just want to make sure that we have enough support to the agency, as does the Board of Governors with the $25 billion number they put out there, to ensure that we have the resources so that we can continue to meet that requirement of getting the mail out to everybody every single day. So
we'll stick around and visit with people individually, but just so you know, when Mitch McConnell decides to get back to the real task, which is making sure that working families can make rent and pay groceries, and we can get the mail in a position to be delivered in a prompt way. Senator Merkley and I will be on the next plane back to Washington, because this is the last time when you should have a 26-day break when there is so much important work that needs to be done for the public. And the doctors, I think, for those of you that I know are going to see the prescriptions issue as so important. Can you doctors, Dr. Lee, can you talk to people individually? Okay.
Senator, you have 1 second? I'm Jonathan with OPB.
Yeah.
How are you? This is